want to thank you all for taking time out of your day to be here to focus on your physical and mental health, as stress certainly affects both. So we'll definitely be covering that. And we just our hope is that you take at least one thing away from today's presentation that you can implement within the next 24 hours. Like, knowledge is great, but applied knowledge makes all the difference. And so we just really encourage you. There's a lot of good stuff that we'll give to you today, but I'm sure one thing will stand out more amongst the rest. So take that and put some action into place. So let's dive in. So what is stress? Stress happens when something we care about is at stake. It's not a sign to run away, it's a sign to step forward. And that's by Kelly McGonigal. She's the author of The Upside of Stress. It's really that like fight or flight response, and we'll definitely cover that within the next coming slides. But to start off, we kind of want to take the opportunity to have you guys participate in the chat feature. So if you could, tell us when you feel stress, like take a little bit of an inventory here. When you feel stress, where do you feel it? Like, where do you feel it in your body? Where do you see it in your mood or behavior? So you can just do that quickly in the chat, just to kind of get an idea of where everybody feels it, and Amanda can read off a couple for us.
Yeah, so we've got some neck and shoulders.
Yes.
Head, cravings, another neck and shoulders, headaches, head, neck and shoulders, attitude, headaches, grumpy.
Yep. All good. Yeah, I was actually going to say that's where I really feel it too, is in my shoulders. I think with that like anxious breathing sometimes. So another definition for stress is it's your body's reaction to any change that requires adjustment or a response. And so the body reacts to it physically, emotionally, and mentally. To add to some of those, like with your body, we've said head, so like headaches, it can be muscle pain, fatigue, stomach aches. In terms of mood, that anxiety that we mentioned, restlessness, anger, it can be a lack of motivation, and depression. In terms of behavior, it can come up as outbursts. It can look like over or under eating. It can look like over or under exercising, misusing drugs or alcohol, potentially withdrawing socially, and having that like the attitude of maybe like throwing in the towel, like why even bother? This is, like I can't change this kind of thing. So these are all ways that stress can negatively impact our health, happiness, and productivity. And we'll expand on that in the next slide. And we'll also cover ways that when you look at stress positively, how that can impact us in those three areas as well. But another way you could look at stress is your environment and circumstances. And I mean, I think we all realize that we've been faced with a very different set of stressors over the past 10 weeks. There's technological issues. There's supporting your kids through school. There's lots of distractions. And so some things are definitely out of our control. But we wanted to note that research has shown that 10% of our happiness comes from circumstances like that. And that's an encouraging percentage because 40% of our happiness comes from our thoughts and behaviors. And so it really goes to show us that we can be active participants in this, in our emotions. We can be in the driver's seat when it comes to how we allow stress to impact our life. And we're going to touch on that in the next couple of slides. So we're going to dive further into the effects, as I noted. So we kind of covered a little bit how negative, when we view stress as negative, how it impacts our health, happiness, and productivity. So I'm just going to expand a little bit on those. So when it comes to our health, our sleep can be impacted by stress. So sometimes we just can't settle our thoughts. We have racing minds. And when we don't sleep, that tends to affect a lot of other things. It can affect our eating habits. So, when you're feeling stressed or when you're sleep deprived, the cortisol or the hormone that is released is cortisol. And unfortunately, that cortisol can serve as a good thing, which I'll get to, but when you have high levels of it, it can help us, or it can make us crave like starchier and sugary foods. So that affects our health in terms of our nutrition. And, we can just kind of go into that emotional eating state. In terms of happiness, those outbursts that I mentioned, a lot of times those outbursts happen to people that we love, people that we're spending the most time with, which right now we are in this current situation. It also can look like, when you're focusing on the negative, you start to look for everything that's going wrong, and that certainly impacts our happiness. And then again, as I mentioned, if you socially withdraw, we know that when you have really strong social support and connections, that actually helps your happiness. So if you're socially withdrawing, that can definitely have a negative effect on it. And then in terms of productivity, whether at work or at home, like feeling overwhelmed tends to put us in that paralysis of, you feel so overwhelmed that you don't know what to do next, so you don't do anything. And when we're stressed out and we're feeling those negative emotions, that tends to narrow our focus, and we have a hard time finding solutions. So on the flip side, with the Broaden and Build theory by Barbara Fredrickson, she talks about when you feel positive emotions, you feel more creative and you're able to find solutions. So like when we're feeling some of these stressors that we maybe can find some control over, we can find those solutions when we're feeling positive emotions. I'm going to give just a few examples of when we look at stress in a positive way, impact our health. So think about exercise. Exercise is a great stressor that you're putting on your heart to improve your cardiovascular health. Another way is you feel happier this is in terms of productivity. So there's this term called flow. Like when you feel flow, you feel immersed in what you're doing. You're enjoying it. It's a good enough challenge where it's not too hard, where you feel that anxiety, and it's not too easy where you feel boredom. So you're naturally more productive because you're enjoying what you're doing. And then again, with the happiness part of it, when you have those social connections that are stronger, that will certainly be a good positive effect. So I covered cortisol a bit, but just want to say that again, there is an upside to cortisol, like when a bear is chasing you maybe, or maybe that's not but anyway, when something's chasing us and there's that fight or fight response, that is good to have it. But when we're just sitting at our desk working, we shouldn't have that feeling of that there's threats around us, right? So that's where we really need to be aware of when that feeling comes on. There is some two hormones that we'll touch on, which you'll see on the screen, is the positive ones. When you look at stress in a positive way, DHEA, it's a neurosteroid, and it helps the brain grow, and it helps counter the negative effects of cortisol. So that's super important. And then oxytocin is a neurohormone. So that fine-tunes your brain's social instincts, primes you to crave connection with friends and family, and helps you to be more empathetic. So those are very, very helpful that get released when we try to look at stress in a positive way. Okay, next are the types of stress. So this may be review, but we're going to cover it because it's important. So just another chance to throw something in the chat box for us is when you hear stress or you think of stress, what's the word that comes to mind? Just any kind of word. Let's see if you guys can just come up with a few. So how you perceive stress when you hear it.
Horrible. Negative.
Yep, that's perfect. You don't need to do any more. So yes, we tend to focus on that second word, distress. So when we think of stress, we think of it in a negative way, a stressor that is seen as negative or detrimental. But there is a good stress, and that's eustress. It's a positive stressor that motivates us and propels us towards our goals. And so let me just give you a few examples of both. So let's start with the negative first. I always like to end with the positive. So for distress, your internet going out or your connection not being good during a Skype class, right? That can feel like a threat. Maybe a child interrupting your Skype meeting. An overload of emails can feel really heavy, or just being stuck inside the home, on these days where we've had some rain and things like that can feel more like a negative thing. On the flip side, with eustress, think about pivoting as a team to serve your customers and clients. Us three have really felt that we've been able to certain challenges as good things to make us creative and be able to serve you guys in different ways. Learning and adapting to new routines. Exercise, like I mentioned, is a good stressor, as well as personal development could be a good stressor, because again, it talks about that flow of it's a good challenge to grow and work your mind in different ways like that. So the goal here is just to really increase our awareness around what eustress looks like. We then have the chance to shift the language or the narrative where we use to describe stressful experiences. So I think we've given a lot of power to the experience of stress and how negative we believe it is. So I think the goal would be to shift the language we use to describe stress And that will then begin to shift the experience of it that we have. So the narrative helps us put ourselves back in that driver's seat that I mentioned, instead of letting our emotions choose the direction for us. So next, I want to dive into our perception of stress. So how are you currently perceiving stress? Is it serving you? And that's just like a good reflection question to ask yourself. So, how can we teach ourselves to perceive stress differently? And this is going to touch on two mindsets. The fixed mindset, which is you feel like your intelligence and your abilities are static. They're carved in stone, like you're just born with it. And the growth mindset, on the other hand, is your abilities can be cultivated and developed through hard work. So one of the most useful tools for navigating daily stressors is reframing the impact these stressors have on our lives. So a stress mindset involves our attitudes and beliefs about the effects of stress, which we've been touching on this whole time. These mindsets alter the way we respond to stressors, both physically and psychologically. So those who view stress as adaptive, like that, it happens, but like you choose a mindset that serves you, they find lower levels of depression, higher levels of happiness, and greater life satisfaction than their stresses, detrimental and negative counterparts, for those that think of it that other way. So if you believe that your qualities are unchangeable, like that fixed mindset, you will want to, prove yourself correct over and over, and then you miss, the opportunity to learn from your mistakes. Where on the other side, I'm going to spend a little bit more time on the growth mindset here. The growth mindset is failure can be a painful experience, but it doesn't define you, okay? And it's a problem to be faced, dealt with, but again, learned from. And a good example of this is the legendary basketball coach, John Wooden. He had said that, failure, you're not a failure until you start to assign blame. That's when you stop learning from your mistakes and you start to deny them. Another aspect of growth mindset is like you assume that skills are an opportunity, like just hear that different narrative, like it's an opportunity of possibility and potential rather than a fixed trait. So think about it like in our personal settings at home or our professional at work. Like people can develop their staff, acquire new abilities, strengthen existing capacities. So seeing the world through the lens of growth enables you to steer your thoughts away from the negative focus induced by stress and then put it back towards the positive. So, in terms of when it comes to the growth mindset, kind of think about the questions that you ask yourself. So do you ask yourself, like, why is this happening to me? Or what could I learn from this? Or, when you think about more fixed mindset, you think, well, I'm not smart enough, or maybe I don't know enough to solve it. But then the flip side or the better question is to ask, well, maybe I don't know it yet. Like just changing your narrative just slightly can really serve you in that way. So now that we've covered stress and how it impacts us and how, we can look at it in two different ways, we're going to hand it over to Amanda, and she's going to cover now the second half of what are some different tools and techniques that you guys can use in times where you're feeling that stress. So take it away, Amanda.
Thanks, Jamie. Hi, guys. So like Jamie said, we're going to go into some stress release tools and techniques right now. But first, I want everyone to sit up, roll those shoulders back a couple times, relieve some of that stress, because I know I was hunching. But like she said, stress release. So these next few slides are going to be some tools and techniques that you can use to help you relieve that stress. So this first slide here, we're going to go through the essentials. So we've kind of categorized these into 4 main essentials that play a role in stress management, stress release. And then we also have a list of some things that we're calling the extras. So I will touch on the 4 essentials. The extras are just kind of there to give you a few more ideas on some management techniques, but most of the extras are going to fit into one of those essential categories. So effective stress management is going to help you break that hold that stress has on your life and leading you to be happier, healthier, and more productive. So the ultimate goal here is a balanced life with time for work, relationships, relaxation, and fun, but still also having that resilience to hold up under pressure and to meet challenges head on. But one important thing to note is that stress is not a one-size-fits-all kind of thing. So it's really important to experiment and find out what techniques, what tools are going to help you and work best for you. So first 4 here, we're going to start with recharge. recharge has kind of two pieces that play into it. First one, I know Jamie kind of touched on this a little bit already, but sleep. So sleep is going to be that first part in recharge. So adequate sleep fuels your mind and your body. Feeling tired can increase our stress because it may cause us to think irrationally, feel irritated, be quick-tempered, all those kind of things. So they recommend for adults 7 to 8 hours of sleep. So it's important to really kind of hone in on getting those hours of sleep in just to help avoid adding that stress from our bodies and our minds being tired. Second part of recharge is going to be relaxation techniques. So a couple different examples of these are going to be like yoga, meditation, deep breathing. These kind of activities activate our body's relaxation response. So the state of restfulness, that's kind of the opposite of that fight or flight response. And then with these techniques, like as you learn them and as you practice them more, your stress levels are going to decrease and you're going to help your body and your mind kind of find that calm, zen, kind of centered spot. So that's our first one of our essentials is recharge. Our second essential is nutrition. So certain foods actually increase the physical stress on our body and it can make digestion more difficult as well as deny our brain the essential nutrients that we need. So when I'm talking about these foods that are going to increase that stress on our body, that's going to be your processed foods, your high sugar foods, all those foods that we know are bad for us, but we want them anyway. Those are the ones that are going to play into this. So like I mentioned, it can cause bad digestion and denies our brain from those nutrients. So it's really important to have a healthy diet that can kind of counteract that impact of those poor foods on our body and impact of that stress. It can help our immune system and lower our blood pressure. So those are going to be kind of your foods that aren't as processed. So the ones you find in that produce section at the grocery store, your fruits, your veggies, all that good stuff. And then another piece to nutrition is going to be water. So you've probably heard us say this, or if you've participated in our programs, we always kind of throw in a water challenge in there. So it's recommended that you're drinking half of your body weight in ounces of water a day. So the importance of that is because our body needs that water to stay hydrated. So with this nutrition piece, you want to keep that body hydrated as well as avoid those not so good beverages. So our alcohol, our coffee, our caffeine. Overdoing that is also going to play an impact on our stress and cause more of that. So first two, recharge and nutrition. Moving on to the next one, movement. So for some of you, you might be thinking, okay, when I'm stressed, the last thing I feel like doing is getting up and working out. But it's actually proven that physical activity is a huge stress reliever. Now, with that being said, if you're feeling stressed, by no means am I saying that you need to go and do 2 hours of a workout to relieve that stress or that you need to be some sort of like pro athlete. Not at all. Main thing with this is just getting yourself up and getting yourself moving. So while you'll get the most benefit from having regular exercise 30 minutes a day or more, it's okay to build it up smaller. So even small activities throughout the day can add up and can help relieve that stress. So you may have heard this before too, but exercise releases endorphins, and endorphins are going to help that mood and help that happiness. So that's why it plays a big role in that stress release. And then the last one of our main 4 essentials is connection. Now this one is a little funny for the kind of time we're in right now. Obviously when they did their studies, when studies were done on connection and stress release and stress management, it wasn't done during a social distancing or a quarantine. So keep that in mind as I go through this one. But studies do show that there's nothing more calming than spending quality time with another human being who makes you feel safe and understood. So they studied that, in fact, face-to-face interaction actually triggers a cascade of hormones that, again, are going to counteract that body's defensive fight or flight response. So a lot of people will say it's kind of nature's natural stress reliever, and as an added bonus, it also helps reduce depression and anxiety. So you want to make it a point to connect regularly and in person with family and friends. Now, with that being said, connection's also huge for us right now, even if it can't always be done in person or face to face. So FaceTime, phone calls, as long as you're still getting some of it in, even if it's not face to face, it's going to benefit you way more than not having any of that connection. So maybe you live alone, or even if you're stuck in the house with your family, the same faces every day, like you still want to have that connection piece with someone outside of the house. So again, connection. So those are your 4 essentials and your extras that are going to kind of fit in there. Those are some management tips. Now we're going to move into the next slide, which is actually a quick stress release activity. So for this one, it's going to be more of like a right now, right here, right now kind of thing. So when you're frazzled by maybe your morning commute, which might look like a commute from your bedroom to the living room or kitchen to nowadays, you're stuck in a stressful meeting, or maybe you're fried from an argument with a spouse or a family member. You need a way to manage that stress level and to manage it right now. So that's where this kind of quick stress relief activity comes in. So the first thing you're going to do is you're going to take a nice deep breath, and then you're going to use one or maybe a couple of your senses to help relieve that stress. So going into that, a couple of examples. So maybe it's viewing a favorite photo. Maybe it's smelling a certain scent. Maybe it's listening to your favorite kind of music, tasting a piece of gum, hugging a pet. Those are going to be examples that can help you kind of quickly relax and focus yourself. Now again, not everyone's going to respond to the same thing in the same way. So you're going to need to experiment and kind of discover which sensory experience is going to work best for you. So the key to that is they say you want to employ the different senses and then note which one or which ones kind of help you relieve that stress or help those stress levels drop quickly. So I'll give an example of it. You're in a stressful situation and you're like, okay, I need to relieve this like right now. You take a deep breath, and then maybe like you're a big music lover. So take a deep breath, you turn on that song that you know instantly kind of boosts your mood and makes you feel happy. Listen to that song, and then there's your quick stress relief. Now again, it's not going to be the same kind of thing for every person. So for this one, I touched on a little bit, but we also made a handout that we're going to send you after the presentation today that'll kind of go into more detail there. But that's your quick stress release activity there. And now we're going to move in to our next one, which is the 4 A's. So this one's going to be a little bit different because stress is an automatic response from our nervous system. So some stressors are going to arise that are like at predictable times. So like an activity or like a moment that you know is going to bring on stress. So maybe you have a presentation at work, or you're hosting a family gathering at your house. You live in a place where there's high traffic and you are driving at that like main traffic time. Those are going to be situations where it's a predictable stressor, so you want to find the ways to handle these. So with this are the 4 A's, so I'll go through them, but it's avoid, alter, adapt, and accept. So I'll give you a little more detail on what all of these A's are. But the first one, avoid. So avoid unnecessary stress. So it's not healthy to avoid like stressful situations that need to be addressed, but you might be surprised by the number of stressors in your life that you can actually eliminate. So the kind of tips that go with avoid is learning how to say no, avoiding the people who stress you out, taking control of your environment, or maybe like honing down on your own to-do list, or even just making a to-do list. So that's avoid. Avoid the unnecessary stress. The second A is alter. Alter the situation. So if you can't avoid a stressful situation, try to alter it. Often this involves changing the way that you communicate or operate in your daily life. But the examples that go along with alter are going to be expressing your feelings instead of bottling them up, being willing to compromise, creating a balanced schedule. Those are all going to play into how you can alter that situation. So avoid unnecessary stress, alter the situation. The third one is adapt. So this is adapt to the stressor. So for this one, if you can't change the stressor, change yourself. You can adapt to stressful situations and regain your sense of control by changing your expectations and your attitudes. So with this one, the couple tips are going to be reframing your problems or looking at the big picture of things. A couple more, adjusting your standards, asking for help when you need it. And then with this one, practicing gratitude really plays into this one. So practicing gratitude is going to help bring positive emotions and will help you find solutions easier. So will help you adapt to that stressor quicker. So those are your examples for adapt to your stressor. Going to move into the fourth A, which is accept, and this one is accept the things that you can't change. So some sources of stress are just unavoidable. We can't prevent or change stressors. Examples of this are going to be like the death of a loved one, a serious illness, or even a national pandemic. In such cases, the best way to cope with the stress is just to accept things as they are. And I know that's kind of hard, like acceptance can be difficult, but in the long run, it's easier than like railing against a situation that you know you just can't change. So accept the things we can't change. The kind of tips that go in with this one is don't try to control the uncontrollable. Look for the upside of things, so finding that positive spin to what might seem like a negative. Learning to forgive, and then again, sharing your feelings, not bottling them up. So those are your 4 A's. Avoid unnecessary stress, alter the situation, adapt to the stressor, and accept the things you can't change. These will also be on another resource that we'll send you after the presentation. So we'll move into the next slide now. Jamie and I just wanted to kind of leave you with a quote. So, it's not the load that breaks you down, it's the way you carry it. Like any problem, stress requires a strategic approach to conquer or at least manage it. We have a choice. We can either let it consume us or we can learn to control it. So, in today's workshop, we went through the different things that are the things or factors that play into stress. And then in the second half, we gave you some different tools and techniques that you can use to control or manage it. So it's kind of up to you now to put this into practice and find which ways work best for you and which ways are going to help you carry your load. So, like I said, we have those couple resources that we'll be sending you after the presentation. We did record it, so it'll be going on our YouTube page. But we just really want to thank you so much for joining us. If you have questions, feel free to throw them in the chat box or unmute and ask us. But otherwise, thank you so much. We hope you enjoy the rest of your day, and we hope that you can take away 1 or maybe 2 of these techniques to help you learn to control and manage that stress and carry that load. Thanks, you guys.
Any questions in there, Amanda?
No, we're getting a lot of thank yous.
Okay, great. And yeah, again, the books that we referenced was The Upside of Stress. If you want to learn more about the fixed mindset and growth mindset, the Mindset book by Carol Dweck is a good one for that. But again, we'll send those resources in the email.
Okay, I'm gonna stop.
Good job, you guys.